And the thing I want to start with talking about, it's been on my mind for some months now. Earlier this year, I was at a gathering that had a different focus than circling. And I was invited to come and bring circling and lead circling and also bring presence into that gathering. It was quite interesting meeting like adjacent communities and seeing how they responded to circling, just because both of us are quite used to, when people participate in our circling, they really come for circling. In this gathering, some of those people had tried circling, but in very different contexts, not with leaders I know or I'm familiar with. And some of them had just heard about circling and hadn't actually tried it themselves. And I noticed that some of the hesitations or skepticism that those people brought to me, I was really intrigued by, mostly because it felt like I had a lot to say about it, and I imagine you would have a lot to say about it as well. And maybe also because I would be hoping that we actually are addressing what those people kind of observed. People expressed something in the lines of, this is what they kind of told me, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. You're now inviting us to circle. You're now inviting us to just be rude and honest and just constantly say what we are thinking to everyone. And we don't actually want to do that because it's just going to be really messy. And right now we're all friends, but then we're just all going to like constantly be honest, but also like it's going to turn into a mess. And it's going to get complicated. And why would we do that? We don't actually want to be that rude. And I navigated it doing that gathering or like being in my leadership. And I imagine these were not the only people who had that experience from circles. So I thought it would be actually really cool speaking a bit about that. And what came to my mind immediately in that moment was something around leadership and skillful truth-telling. I'm not just inviting people to just blur out the most edgy thing that goes on in them constantly.
Yeah. It does seem to be not too uncommon experience of circling, but it has this like triggerfest character where it's just a lot of people saying mean things to each other or projecting wildly on each other. And well, I guess it can be a bit depending on how it's led or who's there and how it goes. I think for me, it's pretty significant that the emphasis is on meeting each other. So it's like, if I share something that might be edgy or challenging for me or for you to hear, it's like holding it as like I'm doing this in service of actually being here with you and us getting closer. If I'm not doing that, like if I don't hold that perspective, I'm personally a lot more careful with bringing myself in that way. It's like a heuristic that I've used quite a lot the last years is like, if I'm not coming from love, then maybe I shouldn't sort of ask questions, and definitely not start talking about who you are, but rather go into self-reveal, just show myself in whatever dilemma or situation I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates. Love and truth coming together. I was just thinking of something else. Slipped away. Yeah, right. So sometimes I think people experience circling as a playground to go towards an edge with truth and their experience. And many people also seem to really appreciate that. Like, oh, there was something. And with that, I can also mean self-reveal. Like, I'm not even speaking about you, but just I'm bringing a bit more truth of my own experience in. I don't actually experience that as being very disruptive if we actually allow ourselves to be with that truth. So it's not just, oh, I would just kind of like throw it at you. No, I'm actually going to be with it, and I'm going to be with the impact it has on you. And I think that's what I would emphasize in circling. It's like, yeah, by no means I just ask people to just bring their truth, but also lead themselves in what truth do you want to bring. Like, it's not just continuously going to some kind of edge of truth, but is there something you really want to bring? And then that is also going to be felt. It's like the intention by saying it, and the curiosity to how it's going to land is going to be felt.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to the whole idea of staying with the impact. Again, it's like, if I bring something that might be challenging for you to hear, and I just bring it because you need to hear this, it will very likely not land very well. It's like, at least I don't like that experience of having truth thrown at me. I go into this like, well, why are you doing this? Like, what do you want, kind of? But if someone tells me something that's challenging, like that they find me distant, which is something I hear relatively often, or like that I'm not really there with them, but it comes with like, and I really want to be with you.
Yeah.
And I struggle to really get to experience you, and I really want to do that. Then it's like, okay, there's a softening, and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I am a bit distant, and it's like, I think, yeah, maybe I'm a bit scared of actually getting closer to you, because you're intimidating in some way, or whatever it is. And then we're actually doing what I would call circling, which is to slow down and deepen. And these experiences that you started talking about is actually the reverse process of that. It's a bit more like getting into a fight. So we pick up speed and we project more.
Yeah.
Or talk more about the other.
Yeah. So in my world, that actually points towards that sometimes what we think is more truth isn't actually more truth. Like, sometimes we experience this, oh, there's this edgy judgment, but what actually, it seems like there's something even more truthful below that, which is often a need or self-reveal, and it's usually a lot more vulnerable. So it's not just so it seems to actually point back quite a lot to the self-reveal.
owning experience, as we would often call it. And it's like, then what is that to own experience? And that, for me, that has been quite a deep journey that has, there's something I've experienced very differently over the years of practice. And these days, there seems to be some quite clear layering in it. That is like, when I started doing circling and related practices, I was acting out, or doing what I would call acting out quite a bit, which is sort of believing that my perception of you is true and that you have to hear it, kind of, or holding back my experience of the world that I still believe is true, because it's too scary to bring it. And those are kind of, they're not in polarity. That's kind of a dynamic, an internal dynamic, and it's all based on the belief that I know what's going on. And that's not a way I really want to be in the world. Like that seems to create a lot of disconnection and suffering for myself and others. And then for quite a long time, I just practiced witnessing, which is something you do in meditation, but you also do it like live in these practices, right? Where it's like, okay, what's actually going on? Okay, I'm having this experience of anger arising in me, but I kind of separate that from my judgment that you created the anger with saying something or by behaving in some way in the space or whatever. It's just like, oh, I had this anger.
Which I find is confronting the idea of like, oh, I'm actually starting to feel responsible for my own experience in a way, which is confronting often in the first few years, I find, or the first time, because it's my experience. I actually have to accept that energetically. That's not you creating that or you doing something to me. And at some point it flips for me, where it's like, it actually is just incredibly empowering. Like, this is actually my experience, so I don't actually have to wait for you to change so that I can have a different experience. I can actually start being with my experience, and I'm not just waiting around and blaming others. So I actually find it incredibly empowering when that realization really clicks in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of ease connected to the witnessing quality. It makes it a lot easier to be in the world too. So, these things are happening, and I can sort of notice them, not being gripped by them. And that can be quite sort of, easeful. And ultimately, I also think it's a trap. To stay in the witnessing. Because it does seem to create an artificial distance between my experience and everything else. And I find that some people start believing that. Like they start living that is like, there is only separation. And often it comes with this expression of, that's just your experience. Where it becomes, for me, a form of violence. That is like, or self-defense often. It most often shows up when someone has expressed something or done something and someone gets angry or upset in some way. And then they go into this like, oh yeah, but that's okay that you feel that way, because that's just your experience. And and I think something is really missed in that. Which is that we're here together. Experiencing, and we are impacting each other. Just not in the way where it is your fault that I am having my experience. But there is impact, and we can explore that impact together and be in it together. And that's where we can find deep intimacy again. Which I think is really important.
Yeah, I could feel the immediate impact if somebody would say that to me, or imagining that. it leaves very little room to actually change or like have the space between us unfold more and more. It's more like, oh, you're there and I'm here.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You spoke with witnessing to the distance it creates between my and your experience. I immediately thought of the distance it creates between me and my own experience, which I also experience with. Witnessing can be incredibly resourcing because of that distance. I think a really important developmental step or a resource. And it's almost like I just keep watching my own experience, which I also experience with a lot of people who have a lot of experience with meditation. But it actually starts to become like a slight, like that distance really starts to be felt more and more. Like, oh, I just kind of keep watching it. But it feels slightly like I just keep watching the world instead of actually like I want to be in the world. Like I am actually the world. I'm not actually sitting back there. I'm like want to like participate. I want to like feel the vibrations. I want to like actually be my experience. And I think that's where circling, for example, can be really cool, because usually when somebody just witnesses a lot, the group will start giving them feedback, is what I often experience. It's like people get slightly distracted or have a hard time listening or bring a lot of life force, like wanting to like pull that person into the world more again.
Yeah. The more I've played around in this territory, the more I have grown frustrated with witnessing, not as a capacity, but as a way of being, like as a belief system that that's the right way of being in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's, well, I did not stop there, and I wouldn't want other people to stop at the witnessing. Like, that's great, you have a new superpower. Then, like, at some point, it's like, well, there's other cool superpowers that we can go on to where we keep the capacity for witnessing, but we actually live a bit more. And witnessing started feeling dead for me.
What's the next step? What would you recommend to people?
A bit hard to put a proper label on it, but my preferred one these days is embodiment. It's something with like moving and there's like a pre-trance kind of fallacy in this, because embodiment looks a bit like starting to act out again. And in some way it is, but it's acting out with awareness. So you keep the witnessing awareness and sort of the widened sense of, I am here, I am noticing more of the fullness of my experience. And I also fucking want to be here with you. And if I'm angry, I'm not just going to say, oh, I notice anger arising. I'm going to say, like, fuck, I'm angry with you. And it's like, there's engagement. I want you to feel me. And that creates a completely different sense of like, we're here together.
Which is, I'm really glad you're bringing this, because this is another thing that people have. I actually think that a lot of these people who tell me these things about circling, they only have tried bad circling, actually. Or they have tried the circling disappropriate, or the leader was at their appropriate age, but I don't lead circling where we just keep noticing. And people kept making this joke, which I think speaks to what happens in some of those circles, but not just circling. I think also other communities where we just keep noticing. It's like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm noticing that. And that's not the practice we actually leading. Like, where I think that actually speaks to truth speaking again. It's like, what is the deeper truth? And the deeper truth is not just, I think people sometimes just keep thinking about edgier judgments to bring or something, where it's like, that is often actually the less vulnerable, the less true thing. I think we can have like a sense of what's the most true, and that's usually also where there's a lot of vulnerability. Like, wow, like actually, like really bringing my anger, like really showing up, like I actually want to be here with you. It's just incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah, and yeah, I think edginess and vulnerability are pretty good traps in these practices. Like if you start thinking that you have to be either of those, you will most likely get stuck in yourself in some way. And especially with vulnerability, I find that there's quite some misunderstanding of what it means to be vulnerable, where I often meet people that feel kind of pressured to be vulnerable. It's like I have to find some kind of darkness or wrongness inside of me, and preferably I need to cry while I bring it, and like then I'm vulnerable. And if I can't find that, then I'm not really doing the practice right, and there's some kind of distress in that.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, as you say, I prefer speaking to truth, like what's the deepest truth I have available right now, and that can be like, I don't actually want to be vulnerable with you. I don't feel super safe here, and I need a little bit of distance. And remembering that that's still happening in connection. So me saying that doesn't mean that I don't want to be with you. It's actually an invitation to being in the intimacy of me wanting distance right now. And there's some subtlety in that that's often missed, I find, where sort of the big catharsis, crying, screaming, you need to express your anger by fucking wrestling with someone, it's a bit easier in some way, but ultimately I don't find it that interesting.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing actually is that a lot of these like traps or things we can kind of fall into, like in contemplative practices or ways in which we like bypass or start to become attached, those are all actually just also happening in circling practice, or can happen. This, oh, something else needs to happen, this, a bit of chasing, or this isn't quite it yet, I need to be more vulnerable. Me just sitting here feeling nothing isn't, it needs to be different, or we need to be connected and close. All these ways in which we actually start to become attached. And if it's skillful, if it's really good circling, I think we are led into really noticing those things. It's like, oh, I have this idea that I'm angry, and now right. So the truth might also be like, I have this idea of like, now I need to really express my anger really big, but actually it's just quite subtle, or like it even wants to pull a bit away, or
Yeah, and then the other side of it is like we're just doing our best, and people are doing their best in the practice spaces. And at least that's my experience, and my baseline is that, like, why would people not try to do their best? They're just trying to do their best based on a belief system or a rule system that might not be serving them, similarly to how I'm doing that. And then it's like, can we help each other to see that what we're doing might not actually be in service of what we deeply want or long for? And I think that is a big part of the circling process also. It's like, well, someone will bring something and it might be charged at first because, well, that person is still at in a place in themselves where they act out a lot. And then like, oh, okay, what's it actually like to be with that for me or for others in the circle? And can we meet that with as much compassion as we can while still being boundaried or like not tolerating being spoken to in particular ways, but also not bringing blame back and stepping into the dynamic of it. And there's some very cool and very subtle moves in that, where we kind of support each other by translating what's going on here. Okay, so you were really angry with something, but you say that it's the whole group, or like that something is wrong in the room. Okay. Can you tell me more about that? And then it's like, oh yeah, actually I feel really outside of the group and lonely. I was like, okay, yeah, what's going on with that? It's like, I would really want you to be in the group, but I feel a bit inadequate in helping you. And like slowly we get into like, oh, what is the deeper truth of what is happening here? And very often at the end of that, there's quite a lot of beauty in the meeting. And then you could say, of course, it would maybe be better in some way of the word if we all always had full access to our truth and love and just said, I love you all the time. Like, and meant it. And well, we're not, we're flawed.
Yeah, I find that though, the polarity between truth and love, how they interplay, like I've had circles where just, yeah, like where we started, like people just keep bringing more truth, and it's just like, wow, it's really individually empowering, but it's also just like, oh, it's exhausting, it's really complex, and it gets messy and a bit rough at the edges, quite rough. And then we can connect back to love in my world, where it's like, oh, actually, there's something much simpler. We don't actually need to figure that all out. We can actually just be really close, or everything is actually quite beautiful also. But I've also been in circles where just that comes forth. I was just like, oh yeah, we like, it almost like strikes us like a harmony that at some point just starts to feel a bit deadening, or like tiresome. People start to get a bit tired or slightly bored almost, which sometimes for me points to, oh, there's actually something, there's actually more truth, or there's more individual agency of like, oh, can we actually look in the way in which we don't all have the same experience and we aren't just one group? We actually like each having our own experience, each having our desires, needs, and usually there's like a really deep group coherence coming from us really accepting that we're different, or like not going to coherence too early. And I think that's what I often experience in Sonnet leadership circles, actually, like this arc of like, sometimes we have to go through this chaos or like trigger, or like, you know, like where one big thing happens and then like 15 other things at the same time. And in all other modalities, what I experience is that we just start down regulating them. It's like one thing is happening, so let's actually take care of that before we do anything else. And in Savannah leadership, what I sometimes experience is just like it becomes more and more, and nothing quite makes sense. And why are we even doing that? Or like, for me, those are the moments where I start praying usually. Or with like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know if we're gonna come out on the other side, or if everyone is just kind of at the end gonna walk away. But usually it's really worth it, because it has this arc of like, oh, okay, now we've been in the chaos, we've had our boundaries like clarified, or stepped each in our power, accepted that we're individuals, and then usually there's a really deep, very different group coherence coming, where we like actually sovereign, where we know integrity. Of course, I don't want to get attached to chaos always having to happen. I think that's also a trap. Or chaos always being good. But I find that quite common, like a very beautiful thing in Savannah leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's always the risk on the side of the leader of going into managing when things get a bit rough. It's like, starting to believe that I know the solution for this, and I'm just going to meddle a little bit so that this will all be nice and harmonious. And I think that is what is done in most practices. Like, that is actually the role of the leader, is to, it's often called hold space or something like that. But in some way, make sure that the harmony is kept all the way through. And surrendered leadership is quite different from that. It's actually trusting that the group intelligence can work this out, and that I'm just a part of it. I'm not the one that's supposed to fix it.
So then I actually want to speak to the other pole, because I think there are like kind of stages or phases we go through in our circling leadership. And then I experience sometimes in the beginning, for example, when I started leading, it still sometimes happens, because there's a very fine line between, I don't want to start managing or like thinking I know better what should happen here. But there's a slightly different move that we are at the risk at. And I think this is also sometimes what people have experienced in circling, and then they become skeptical, where the leader withdraws a bit. Like I find it quite subtle when I'm leading. It's just like, oh yeah, this is not quite my responsibility, because some way it isn't quite. Like, it's not our responsibility to make it a nice circle, but obviously I still have responsibility as a leader. And it's a very fine line, but I find that sometimes a leader, or it's easy to also just slightly lean out and just let it happen without actually bringing our leadership, without actually, and I find that generally the way back for me is, okay, I don't want to manage this because I think it needs to be better, or often I would have to own my own fear, my own discomfort with the chaos. And if I stay there, at some point there's generally something coming through that isn't managing, that can, for example, just be love, or, oh, I genuinely have the sense like I want to help you two guys translate, because I just, like, it's aching because it just feels so obvious on the outside, or it's more genuine than managing, which usually also means it's just landing very differently. And it can be such an incredible fine line to walk as a leader.
Yeah, it's the edge between surrender and leadership. And it's like, I guess it's a pendulum kind of thing. You'll do the one thing a little bit more than maybe is necessary, and then you'll lean to the other side a little bit, and it's hard to be perfectly in the center of it.
Yeah. And this is actually also something I think those people expressed to me at that gathering earlier this year. Oh, so you're going to now make us all just speak the truth? I'm exaggerating a bit. And then when the session ends, you're just going to like leave us with that. And two things, like, I exaggerated a bit now, but like, I as a leader, I don't want to make anyone say something edgy they don't actually want to say themselves, because then we get in a really blurry territory of responsibility. Like, maybe I also hold it as a leader, like, maybe not saying the truth is, or like maybe not bringing your edginess is exactly right, potentially. What was the second thing? Oh yeah, and then this, oh, you're just gonna ask us to do something as a leader, and then it's gonna be all messy, and you're gonna stop taking responsibility for that. That's a little bit what I heard in that concern. I think it's actually more of a concern that I hear.
And it sounds like valid fears. I think it is quite scary to go into some kind of intensity in your identifications where you're in quite a deep struggle, and you have the experience that you're not being supported in that at the same time. Like, that can be quite impactful. And it can be hard to say if that is actually what's happening also. And at least I've had experiences both on the participating side and on the leading side of having that belief in me that, like, oh, now I'm alone, and then either being supported or supporting someone else and seeing that it's like, well, there's actually a room full of people here.
Yeah.
And they all seem to be quite with you or with me. And most of them even seem to be quite open and loving. So it's like, are you seeing that too? And that's quite a transformative experience, because there's something with the belief of now I'm wrong, or this is not allowed, I'm not allowed to have this experience. And then sort of just seeing that other people don't mind so much. Maybe a few people are angry at you, but it's like, it's not like the world is angry at you. And even the people that are angry at you, they seem to be kind of okay with it, or like at least we can get back to being in connection again.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I get that it's scary, and I really understand the fear of, like, in a work setting or a friends group or whatever, just being dumped into a surrendered leadership situation, and then all kinds of stuff comes up that is sort of half processed because it just comes up and we don't have time for everything, and it's just, we're just doing this for a few hours, so it's not rounded in any ways. And then going back to work the next day or whatever, like, sounds terrible. I would not recommend doing that.
I feel my heart a lot, like really acknowledging that can be scary. Or I somehow imagine that if somebody sat in my circle and told me, oh, I'm feel really alone, you're just gonna leave us, or like, I'm gonna be in this mess. I just feel like my heart so much on that, like, oh, I actually want to be with that person. And what I actually experience usually happens is, well, it can get a bit edgy and it can get a bit messy. I think there's a phase in which people do that. But often when people are like really concerned, it wouldn't actually get that messy. You would actually start exploring the ways in which they're like hesitant to bring themselves, or like a bit worried or scared, and then that usually has more of a slow unfolding of like, oh, okay, what is that? And then usually if somebody brings like, oh, I love you, I really care about our relationship, and there's something edgy I could bring, what I actually see most of the time happening is that the other person is like, wow, I actually feel cared for and I actually want to hear it. And feel almost like, yeah, like excited for it. Or, so yeah, I also don't think it would actually get that messy if people actually stay in contact with their own experience. So they don't just start telling the truth because they think the leader is asking for that. And I think I did that in the beginning a lot. I would see the leader be really honest, and then I would think, oh, the rule here is I have to be really honest, which means I'm doing it, and then I would feel really blamed, or I would feel really bad because I thought, oh, but I just did the right thing. I just did what he did, like the leader, which meant that it wasn't actually my own discernment. And then things can get really intense also. But that actually just led to me really looking at, do I actually want to bring my truth? Do I actually think that's the right thing for me here? So like, it means I'm starting to take responsibility for it as well.
Yeah. It's also making honesty into a thing.
Yeah.
Like similarly to making vulnerability into a thing, which I would be careful with, where it's like, no, it's like, it's presence-based. It's not just saying anything. It's saying or embodying as close as I can to truth in presence. It's like, what is true for me right now? And that might very well be that, like, I have impulses to tell you things, but it actually doesn't feel right. And I don't know why it doesn't feel right, but I want to just check where you are right now. So, but I do want to be with you. And then it's like, maybe at some point we will get to me telling something that I've held back from them. Maybe we won't, and we'll meet in something else. But it's like, we sometimes make truth into secrets, or talk about honesty as like only withholds, like that's the only thing that can be true. And we miss out on what I find the most exciting, which is like, what's happening right here? Like, what's the process of relationship that we're in right now? What's true about that?
Yeah, I would actually feel quite touched by the bit where someone is concerned about how it would land, or the care for the relationship. Like, that actually just feels like that's already it. Actually, like, oh, okay, there's concern, and then we can start exploring. I imagine it would unfold to, okay, what concern is actually needed, and what do we trust each other? There's one last thing I noticed that I'd like to speak into, which is something around, I think I see it as a developmental phase that people go into self-expression. And we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, like this witnessing and this actually being in. And I think this is also like a phase I see people go through, where they start to become attached to the self-expression. Because circling can be a space where they suddenly, oh, I can actually do what I want to do. I don't actually need to wait for the whole group to agree, or I don't even need everyone to like what I'm doing. There's a certain discord that I'm fine with, and I'm really, that's empowering. And then when it starts to become a thing, which I also sometimes see, it's like, oh, but I'm just allowed to do what I want. Like, you're all triggered, but like, which again, I think it's just, it means that we moved actually out of, or we started saying that self-expression is more important than care for the whole, or being with the impact it has on others. Because again, in circling, like, we can become attached to, oh yeah, I can just do whatever I want, but actually that's not the deepest truth. Like, when I act, I want to actually be aware of how it impacts others.
Yeah.
So there's a pre-trans fallacy again, I would say.
Yeah. It's tricky to label these things, but when you speak to it, for me, it sounds a bit more like acting out. It has a bit more sort of child acting out quality, that like, I'm allowed to do exactly what I want, and you can't stop me. And it still actually has this, that's just your experience over there. But like, not acknowledging the togetherness,
Yeah,
but only being with the separation of like, yeah, I'm doing what I want, and you should be doing what you want, and I can't limit you in doing what you want because we're separate.
Yeah.
And I imagine that when people are in that state, there is likely a deep longing for intimacy and connection and togetherness.
Yeah.
And there's maybe a belief that it's not possible, or
I think it also speaks that they're still in the rebellion of like, oh, I don't actually truly believe it's okay for me to just be. I think I need to fight for my right to express myself. And that's going to be felt by the group as well. yeah, the image I got as well was like children, like the beauty of that phase. It's just like, like, yeah, I was at a dance party with 300 people some days ago, and we were in this contemplation moment where everyone just turned silent and there was a space in the middle. And there were two boys, like, I imagine like 5, 6 years old, that just kept screaming and running in the middle. And it's incredibly beautiful. Like, they don't care about the impact they have, or like it's enlivening and people were like in awe with that. But then also at some point, like seeing that, we couldn't actually, like at some point the leader or the person guiding tried to speak and we couldn't actually hear that because these kids were just like playing completely unbothered. And like, we don't actually want to regress to that as an adult. It's like, oh no, I found circling and I can just do whatever I want. We don't actually want to become the adult that just like unbothered, no matter what happens all the time, is in that, in that move. That's kind of regressing to like a 5-year-old in a way, actually. So there's like a skillful, more attuned. I think it just actually feels, the more we kind of grow and mature, there's just more awareness, or there's a bigger capacity to be with more of what is. So it can be at the same time with, I have this longing to just actually not listen, but actually just run around, and I have this longing to like scream. But I'm also with, the group seems to be in a contemplative moment. And so I'm not just with either or, but my capacity to be with more realities just growing, like expanding. And I would say that is actually skillful circling, or skillful circling practices that.
Yeah, and it's tricky because it lands in this fundamental question of like, what is the right thing to do? How do you know? And I think the thing that circling sort of puts in our face is like, well, you cannot find that outside of presence.
Yeah.
Like if you try to find it outside of presence, you will get stuck in some belief system of what's right and wrong to do, and it won't fit with reality.
Yeah.
But you can actually trust experience in presence too. But at least that's how I experience it. That is like, there is no right thing to do in the moment that is in alignment with what is happening. And it might look like dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, this seems to be my gift to the emergent moment right now.
Yeah.
And it has a quality to it. And that is what I sort of get in touch with when I think about truth. It is that quality of like, there's the soup metaphor that I often reference from Peter Ralston, where it's like, see yourself as an ingredient in a soup. Don't get attached to being ingredient in the best way. You're just supposed to be part of a soup that is happening. And you can, sometimes the soup really needs a lot of you. Like if you're the salt, sometimes the soup needs salt to be interesting at all. And sometimes it doesn't need more of you, because if you're salt, then you will completely ruin the soup if you add more of that.
Yeah.
And I think we can, some of what we practice in circling, and especially in surrender leadership, is getting a sense of that sort of my contribution-ness to the emergent moment. And it's like a dance that we're in together.
Yeah.
And we're all, well, in some way we are all fully contributing all the time. And in some way it's also true that it's like, but I can play my role more.
Yeah.
With more excellence or more beauty right now. And it will create a different moment. It will.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's actually really touching, because I imagine this is why both of us actually care quite a lot about this practice. Like, It's not rules. It's not like always do this or this is how it is. It's like actually in the moment it's felt. For me, that speaks to, I like to see maturation or this like self-development as like elegance. Or like I'm actually, an elegance for me actually speaks to I'm context aware. I'm fine-tuned to this particular moment. I'm not like, oh, I love my self-expression and circling, but it seems like in this circle, I'm actually highest leadership. And the biggest truth is actually I'm just sitting here in awe, in silence. And that's actually the biggest contribution. And it is a contribution. Yeah, just
or thinking that I'm so tired that I can barely move.
yeah.
And it's like, and it's a struggle because I want to be a skillful, powerful leader that looks in a particular way, but all I can do is actually lie on the floor and say that I would want to do better.
Yeah.
And that is my biggest contribution.
And self-expression. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the polarity to the self-expression that we talked about before is like, it's half of the skill, I would say. Like self-expression without listening becomes a form of violence, because it's like putting myself onto the world or the circle or whatever. So it needs some listening capacity, like I'm doing Tai Chi stuff. So it's like it needs sensitivity for what is and a listening to the room. That is also really important. And then if I only go into the listening to the room, it becomes a kind of collapse, and I'll actually let my boundaries be overstepped, and I'm not really there. And again, it's like a balancing act. How can I be both at the same time? And in practice, it looks like a pendulum. Like people will go from collapsing quite a lot to getting quite invested in their self-expression. And it's like, oh, now that's a bit much. And then we slowly swing towards central equilibrium.
I get a very strong, it's almost like I'm being dropped into a state of just, what is it actually? Imagine most people know this. You know when you're like in tune, or like you dropped in, and now it's just easy to just do, like it's just all right. Like you dropped into a place where like I'm at the right place, I'm with the right person, the right time. And then it's almost just like it continues to just, you're surfing the wave. It's just like, oh, yeah, I applied myself really expressive here. And oh, now I'm sinking into this. Oh, I'm just gonna rest here. Oh, and then this person came to me and we had this. And it just keeps going. It's like, that's really what I'm starting to feel. I think Tai Chi is one way of practicing it, or like Wu Wei, or like, oh, it's actually like, I'm not just getting attached to one pole or one way of being, but I'm starting to move really elegantly, really smoothly, almost like something else is moving me actually, just between all these polarities, and they're all just turning into one thing anyways. And I think that's the beauty we can have in these spaces sometimes, of like, wow, like really deep insight into a way of being in this world.
Yeah, like responsiveness. It's like, I like the way you speak to sort of the continuity of it, because that significantly changed for me at some point in my experience of leading, circling, and being in circles, from having quite a lot of experiences of sort of contraction, release, contraction, release. I'm quite contracted, and then I tell the truth to someone, or I am with someone, and it opens up and it's like, oh wow, this is really beautiful. And then it's like, oh, now this is becoming a bit too much, or it's ending, and now I don't know what to do, so I'm going to contract again.
Yeah.
And then doing that a lot. And then starting to have these experiences of like being in this widened awareness with someone, and it's, oh yeah, this is coming to an end, and that does seem to be what is happening. And then turning around, and it's like, oh, there's something over there that I feel drawn to, or I'm still in this, even though we're not in some kind of intensity. It's just like, oh, what I want to do now is just turn around and be with the whole group, and then we do that together, and we just sit in silence for a while, and but it just doesn't change the state. And I think these days, even, well, not even, but like often I have the experience of contraction being held in awareness also. So it's not like the awareness disappears. It's just like,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm quite contracted right now, and that's often painful and a bit difficult to be in. And I'm also with the okayness of it.
Yeah.
So trusting it more.
Yeah. Yeah, what you speak to for me is, I don't want to become attached to Savannah leadership. I should always be in this incredible flow. That's not actually true. That's not the practice I want to lead. I think it's incredible when it happens by itself, because it happened by itself, like it was right. But it's equally much, I might sit in these, I don't know what to do, but it seems actually really valuable to explore that, because half of life is actually like, yeah, I never quite know what to do. Like, so I'm not getting attached to that, but I find it incredible how we can impact each other, the interconnectedness. Usually these really deep states of like synchronicity happen when everyone starts dropping in. Because then if everyone just keeps doing the thing that's really right for them at the right timing, we just like exaggerate that whole state, and like really deep things, like mystical things start happening in the group as well. I often experience this when you're on a week-long retreat or you're going deeper with a group. I can keep talking to you about these things forever. I wonder if it's good to slowly round off, and I imagine we just want to keep having these conversations. And I'm also curious if there are more questions people have, and just tackling those, finding it really, I think there's a lot of life force coming out. It's just like incredibly pleasurable to talk about these things.
Yeah, it feels good. Like, yeah, it's interesting with these practices because we spend so much time in them and we don't talk much about them. And it does feel quite pleasurable to just have time to be like, oh yeah, this is happening, and this is happening. And there's all of these quite subtle things going on, and there's all of these dilemmas and paradoxes that are just integral to the practice. And it feels fun to just unfold them a little bit.
That's also the feedback I see happening or get. Like when leaders start talking about what they're actually experiencing, people are like, I want to just hear more, just because in the practice itself we might not verbalize quite as much at times. So I'm also just very happy to talk about these things, because I think the gift of these practices and leading them, and both of us have just been leading so many hours of this, is that you get to also just witness so much intimacy between people, or incredible things. You get to see certain patterns, or like almost like universal archetype energies of like, oh wow, it's almost as if I've watched this 15 times before, but also it's new every single time I see it. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for leading this practice with me. Thanks for talking with me about these things.
Thank you.